Rick, what's up?
Hello,
How you
Keith.
doing?
How are you?
Good. Or should I say the Honorable Mr. Richard Strom coming out of court?
Oh, I thought you were talking about my dad or something.
No, you baby.
Yeah. I was in court today, and it was fun because I haven't been in court in a long time, and I was sitting there thinking, like, is this really happening to me? And then the judge called the case, and it took me a moment before I realized I'm the guy that had to talk. You know,
Right.
I'm kind of out of practice. So.
Do you get nervous at all?
Oh yeah. I still get nervous a lot.
Really? And it's been, what, 30 years you've been practicing law?
Over 40.
40 years practicing law.
Yeah, I still get nervous, and I think that edge is really important.
Mhm.
I like that because it makes me more aware and more
Present?
on my game, more present, yeah, more focused.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm so glad you're here. Last time you got caught up in court, and so we weren't able to actually meet that day. So I just love how we just go with the flow. No one was upset with it. It's like, hey, it's cool, you know.
To your credit, I mean, that was one of the great things about our friendship that I've always loved and have come to depend on more and more, is that he is so easygoing and so gentle with changes in calendar or changes in life. And I think that's also a metaphor for what you're doing right now. You know, your ability to adapt and to swim smoothly through whatever circumstance shows up because you have inner peace and calm and you've done the work.
Well, thank you. One of the things that I guess that is kind of a little segue into what the show will be about today. So today what we're going to talk about is change takes effort. Okay, so again, change takes effort. We'd like it to be easy, but it rarely is, and it requires you to be consistent if the change is going to be lasting.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things I think that would be a cool little preface to our discussion is to say something that the audience may be wondering about. We've gotten questions about this, and I think it's kind of interesting. One question that we get a lot is, so when you sit down to study your lines before you do the show, and you know what the topic is, how does it feel when you change it? And the reality is, we start off by sitting down and saying, hey, what do you want to talk about? So there's no script. And so when we're dealing with change, we're dealing with everything that we're talking about is on the fly and comes from our hearts. It's not something that we sit down and give a lot of study or thought to. Maybe we should do more of that. But the idea is that there's a genuineness and authenticity that comes from discussing things that are really, really important to you, that have worked for you over the years. And one of them is that ability to be changeable. And that's why we don't use scripts, because the changing, the fact that it's always a fleeting target, a moving target, is what is inspiring and produces a lot of great results. So I guess my question to you would be, were you ever in your life at a time when you felt like change was just something you didn't want to deal with, that you'd prefer knowing what was going to happen pretty much all the time?
Pretty much all my life. I was like that for most of my life, and I would have people around me who would tell me, like, hey Keith, relax, it's going to be okay. You don't have to know everything. And I was like, yes I do, I need to know everything. And they were trying to let me know that it's impossible to know everything, and you need to really let go of that. And by not letting go of it, I spent most of my life suffering. It really wasn't until perhaps the last 3 years that I really let go of any kind of certainty. 3.5 years, I mentioned before, I went through a breakup. The business was impacted by the breakup. A lot of choices I made kind of produced what I was experiencing at the time. And during that tumultuous time was really the time that I let go of any kind of certainty. I didn't know if the business was going to survive, if I would ever, have, friendships that would, my friendship circle would grow again. I didn't know if I'd have to change careers. I didn't know anything, where I might live, if I'd be able to pay the rent. There's nothing that I knew. But it was in that moment that I found peace. And the peace part of it was not all the years and decades. It was not found in the certainty that was slipping through my hands at every time I tried to grasp for it. but it was actually found in the accepting what is,
Oh.
and it was found in embracing the unknown. I mean, that's really where I found the peace. It was the exact opposite of what I was trying to achieve. It's crazy.
And the ultimate result for you was what? How did that feel? What was the change like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
It felt amazing. It was not as advertised as what people told me it would be like, or what my mind told me it would be like. It would be scary. You know, you're going to drown. Life is over. It was none of those things. It was the exact opposite. I felt weightless.
Good for you. What a great word. Yeah, I can see that exactly. You know, when you're talking about certainty and security, I think what we're all talking about is a sense of control.
Yes.
And what we all try to do, I think particularly people who are A-types, who own their own businesses or who are at the top of their game, trying to control all of the variables in life so it's certain, so there are no surprises, so we stay on top. But that's a paradox, because the more you control, it's like trying to grab water.
Exactly.
The more you try to squeeze out of it, the more it's fleeting, the more difficult it is.
Absolutely.
And again, one of my heroes, Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist and unfortunately was in a concentration camp for years during World War II, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And
Great book.
Very short book. But the main point of it is you are always, always, always in control of your attitude toward the circumstances. So you have a choice. Every time an attitude question comes up for you, if something hits you, a circumstance hits you, how am I going to react to this? Am I going to want to manipulate it so it comes out a certain way? And that's usually what most of us do. Or do we just say, oh, that's interesting. I'm detaching. I'm going to find something out of this that I think is valuable or an opportunity for me to learn, as you did or must have done with your business issue.
It was, it was a business issue, a relationship issue. It was almost like, in terms of what I cared about, what my goals were geared toward, it was devastating. It was like the perfect storm until it wasn't. I could have continued to react like I'd done all the years prior, and which would have been trying to save everything, trying to manage it and figure things out, what you said, manipulate things, but it just would have produced more suffering, and I did not want to suffer anymore. And I found myself letting go, and like I said, I could not believe how serene it was. It was shocking to me, and I just continued to do that every day. Every day, just, okay, this is what is. I accepted it, without any attachment of how it could be different or anything like that. If there was something I could do different, then I took intelligent action. If there was nothing to be done differently, then I let it go. And the letting go, it feels really, really good. And I continue to practice it every day, and which is also what the podcast is about, is that change takes a ton of effort.
Yeah, true.
A ton of effort.
Well, the adjustment to change.
Yes, the adjustment.
Yeah.
The adjustment to change takes a ton of effort. But once you do it consistently, day in, day out, every single day, it becomes second nature. And that's what's happened with me, is it literally has become second nature. All the things that would bother me before, where there'd be a ton of suffering, I'm finding that first it was just the awareness. I would get into the ego, struggle and battle with it, to resist it, to want it to be different, to say things like this shouldn't have happened, or it should be this way. I would fall into that trap that most of the planet falls into. That would happen. And then as I continue to do my daily rituals in my practice, which those rituals include, reading in the morning, doing gratitude, listening to an inspiring podcast, as well as exercise, as I would do those things, it would help me shift into accepting what is.
Good for
which
you.
in all of that, I found the peace with. And instead of it taking me a day or two later to come out of that ego space of resisting and suffering and wishing things were different, I would start to catch it sooner the next day.
I think
the
that's-
next time. And then a little bit more, sooner and sooner. To now,
Yeah.
there's things that happen, I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that would have tripped me up before. And it didn't, and it's like a week later that I realized it. So I'm getting better and better with it, but I'm under no illusion that if I let up for a second with this kind of intention, that I'll be back where I was before, suffering all over again. And I want no part of that.
Well, and I think that we all need to keep in mind that change is the one constant. No matter what you think mastered, everything is subject to change, and everything that the universe can throw at you, it will. It'll throw death and illness,
Absolutely.
and poverty, or some kind of I would say, what we would normally call defect toward you, that you can either accept as a defect or you can use to learn a lesson from. Change is always a constant, and the more we struggle against it, the more pain, the more suffering.
Absolutely.
And you said something that's really, really great, and I think that's important for everybody to get. We have to have a routine that allows us to have some sort of inner bright light that nobody can touch. I mean, there's this sense of being always on your game within yourself. Not that you have to look good to the rest of the world, but within yourself, you've got it together. And you mentioned a routine.
Yes.
I just went to the Sedona Illuminate Film Festival. Illuminate Film Festival.
You put that in the show notes.
I'll put that in the show notes. And there was a great movie that was done by a fellow who had almost died. In fact, he was dead for a while in a car accident and came back. And he was a motivational speaker, and he used that to try to help people develop this system where they could be almost impervious to things that would happen outside of them. He would be able to adapt. And interestingly enough, he contracted terrible leukemia, and he beat that as well as the car accident. So here he was talking about this on film, and let me give you the acronym of what he believes in. He said, if you start your routine with something called SAVERS, which is the acronym SAVERS.
Oh, yes.
And you do this every day.
Was it Hal Elrod?
Yeah, hell,
Yeah, oh my God, that's where I started the practice.
Hey, buddy.
That's right, baby, yeah, that's where I started.
This is
Yeah,
the dude.
yeah, the Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning.
Yes.
It'll be in the show notes. Okay, so SAVERS is start with silence, or could be prayer or meditation. Every day, you get up early, you don't miss this. All of these have to be done. Do you remember what the A is?
Affirmations?
Affirmations. So we create things like, I am powerful, I am strong. When things are threatening to me, I go within myself and understand my need to be with myself. Whatever the affirmation is that you're trying to work on. Yeah. V?
Visualization.
Visualization. So we look at things as if they've already happened. And so your mind can't distinguish between the reality and the idea that something that you're thinking is real too. Right. So if you're, for example, if you're going to give a presentation to a room full of CEOs, you go to the room, you learn how it feels to be in the room, and then you visualize yourself successfully saying these things, and the CEOs welcoming everything you're saying with open arms. Visualization. Right. Yep. E?
Exercise.
I knew you'd get exercise, buddy. Look at this dude. He exercises or what? True. Okay, so E is exercise, which means, in our case, it's always nutrition, cardio, RT, and sleep. Those are the big four for exercise.
Absolutely.
Yep. And R?
R, let me think. R is rest.
R is something very close to rest. Let's come back to R, but let's finish with S. Let me do that one because I like to write.
Right.
S is for scribing, which
Yes.
really means journaling. Journaling.
Oh, I know what R is. Reading.
That's right. That's right. Doggone. I was going to do that. This guy always trumps me. I just can't get ahead. Okay, so let's finish up with that last S, and then you do reading. So S is scribing, meaning every day you write down things that are important to you, things that you didn't do so well on, and things that you did really well on, and something that Keith is a big advocate for, which is gratitude. Always find things in the morning when you're starting out. I'm grateful that I have sight to see. I could smell the pancakes or the bacon this morning. I could smell, it felt wonderful. It can be minor things. The joy in life is very small based. It doesn't have to be monstrous, like I got a huge raise or I'm now president of the company.
Right.
Okay, reading.
Reading. This is the first thing I do in the morning right after gratitude. It is huge for me because it helps me train my mind. So I'm very strategic and intentional about what I read. My go-to is the Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living by Dr. Amit Sood. It's what I read every single day. I read other things too, but this one I read every single morning, rain or shine, because it grounds me and it helps me get out of obsessive thinking, having open files in my mind, as Dr. Sood talks about, and having that residue that keeps me distracted from the present moment, either worrying about what might happen later, or obsessive thinking about it, or regretting what happened before. So it just really helps me with that.
And so what we're talking about basically is a technique that if you did every day would become, as Keith says, a practice, in which I believe creates this sense of inner peace and this candle that's it's eternal within your heart that allows things to come in and just bounce off, come in, bounce off, come in, bounce off. It's true.
I totally agree. You know, one of the things that was key for me with this, before whenever I would start something, I guess I accepted a long time ago for me to be fit, that I would have to exercise every day for the rest of my life. And exercise is not something that particularly enjoy doing. People think because I'm fit, I like exercise. But if I could be fit without having to lift a weight or do a pull-up or go for a run, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Uphill.
Well, I don't want to do that.
All right.
But anything short of that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to do it. I wish if I could just naturally be that way, it'd be great. But I also need it for my emotional state as well as my mental state. So it's super important for me. So that's not an option. I have to do exercise every single day to be at my best.
Yep.
So with that said, the second thing that I had to accept was this ritual that I do every morning that really only takes 10 minutes, unless I'm going to do a full workout, which would take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. But other than that, the investment of my time is 10 minutes or less when I do my gratitude list, my reading, my podcasting, and my stretching and ab work in the morning. That's all it takes. It's less than 10 minutes. And before, people are like, man, I don't have 10 minutes. I just don't have. What I found is I've never missed a day, but I'm super concerned that if I do miss a day, that I will just sink back into the old way of living, which only produces suffering for me. And as I said, I want no part of that life anymore. I want a peaceful life. When you see me, all that comes out of me is loving kindness. No matter how life shows up, no matter how other people show up, is loving kindness. This ritual, this practice, like Savers, is what does it for me. So once I accept it, Keith, this is what you're doing for the rest of your life. I had to accept that every day for the rest of my life, this is what you're doing. It's like brushing my teeth. It's like I got to eat a meal. Like, this is my new reality. Once I start resisting that and got that, oh my God, that is a very small investment for the return. The return is amazing. Like, all day for a 10-minute investment for all day, I get to be lit up like this.
It's a centering exercise. The idea that you center and you protect your heart, you protect what's inside of you, not by retreating into your heart, but by creating things that are totally external to you. Meditation is about connecting with things bigger than yourself. Reading is about being inspired by other people's story. Affirmations is about reaffirming things that you believe in that are eternal truths for you, etc. All of those things are things not to create a reclusive person, but to create a person who's at one with himself or herself, at peace with him or herself, and impervious to, at least as impervious as we can be, to things that are likely to be upsetting.
Right. So before we close, I gave an example of something that I had to work on regarding change so that I could live a more peaceful life. What's a change that you undertook that took a lot of effort and that is required you to be consistent to maintain that change?
Well, I think the exercise was the hardest thing for me. After I had I'd been an athlete in high school and college, and then I got married and let it all slide, and smoked and drank and was on the caffeine, alcohol cycle for a while. And I did that for a good 10, 12, 15 years before I came to ToBeRe. So giving that up, which I thought was just normal for somebody my age, I was in my 50s at the time, but it was killing me. So once I realized that there was something better than that, and I had to get leverage on myself to do that, I wanted to change. And so I sought out the change. The interesting thing is that if I hadn't sought out the change, and this is true with all of us, I think, if we just let things stay the way they are, they're going to change anyway. But they won't have your input. They won't have your interest at heart. So if you're changing to exercise or improve yourself, that's a direction that you want to go in. But if you're just sitting on your butt all day, there's going to be changes, but it's going to be heart disease, COPD, emphysema, trans-ischemic attacks because of smoking or whatever. I mean, you're going to have a lot of health issues.
Yeah, a greater addiction to worry, compulsive thinking,
that's right.
Blaming, shame, the whole 9 yards. You're just going to be going in the direction that you have no say over.
Just by saying those words, he's made me think like I'm drinking rat poison. Just hearing those words.
I know, right?
Yeah, we're so far past that.
Oh, man, it feels good too.
I love you, Keith.
I
You
love
teach
too,
me a lot,
man.
man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for a great show.
Yeah, great.